Good day, viewers. I am Masana JCC, who has come today also to teach you conjunctions. As you can remember, last class we started looking at word classes or parts of speech, and we discussed or taught you nouns and then pronouns. So this is just a continuation to the previous lesson that we had. So I hope you'll also enjoy what we're coming to do today. Now let's look at conjunctions. Now, when you look at conjunctions, it says these are words used to join words, group of words, or clauses. For example, and, but, because, yet, so, either, or, neither, nor, although, etc. So when you say conjunctions, they are joining words. They join words, they join phrases, they join clauses, etc. So that's what they do. So when you look at this, already I went through some examples that we have. But now we're going to look at types of conjunctions. Now, when you say types of conjunctions, basically there are three main types of conjunctions. These are coordinating conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions, and correlative conjunctions. So just like nouns, if you can recall, we talked about noun, we've defined it, gave examples with regard to types. So conjunctions also, we have three types. So they are coordinating, subordinating, and correlative. Now, as we progress, we'll look at each of them, you see, to look at their definitions as well as the role they play. So let's start by looking at coordinating conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions. These join group of words or clauses which are of equal status or rank. In other words, once you want to use coordinating conjunctions, they connect, join, or link other words or phrases or clauses that have the same grammatical rank. You get the point? So that's what it does. Let's look at examples of coordinating conjunctions. We call them fanboys. Now, when it comes to coordinating conjunctions, we have fanboys. The F means for, the A means and, the N means no, the B means but, the O mean or, the Y mean yet, and then the S mean so. Get it? So we call them fanboys, as you can see on the board. You see. So they are fanboys. So they, as we said earlier, grammatically they connect or link two words, phrases, or clauses that have the same grammatical weight or rank. Now let's look at conjunctions suggesting addition. Now, apart from looking at coordinating conjunctions, we have different conjunctions and they suggest different things. Though we know their roles are to link, connect, or join. But then there are reasons to each of the roles they play. Now let's look at them one after another. First, conjunctions suggesting addition. Examples we have and, but, as well as, moreover, besides, not only, but, and, but also, etc. So when you look at this, they suggest addition. Example, we have Maxwell kicked the ball and he fell on the ground. Now when you look at this structure, you will see a conjunction there, and that is and. And when you look at this, it means it connects two actions, the kicking of the ball and the falling of Maxwell. When you look at example 2, we have Fatu came to school, but she was late. You get the point? Two actions are there. And we are looking at that example, we have seen a conjunction, but connecting the two actions there. Get the point? The two sentences there. Both are simple sentences. So the but is connecting them. From there we have the third example. He said he wouldn't talk to me. Moreover, he asked me to leave. So when you look at this, also we have two sentences there. And we have moreover, which is acting as a connective there, trying to link the two sentences. From there, we proceed to a different category. And that's conjunctions suggesting contrast. Example, we have but, although, despite, however, yet, nevertheless, etc. Let's look at examples of these ones. We have one, she still loves him, although he treats her badly. When you look at this example, we have two sentences there. She still loves him is one sentence. He treats her badly is another sentence. But the two are connected by although which is a subordinating conjunction. Though we are yet to look at that, but we are only trying to look at conjunctions suggesting contrast. Two, we tried to see him, but we couldn't. Also, when you look at the word but, it is connecting the two, but it is in contrast form. 3, Lamin came to school late. However, he was punished. When you look at here too, we have two sentences there, and then the two are being connected by however, which is a connective or a link or whatever, as we discussed earlier. So it means when you look at these conjunctions, we talked about one suggesting addition and the other one suggesting contrast. From there, we move on to correlative conjunctions. Correlative conjunctions suggesting alternative. That's either or, neither nor, otherwise, or etc. Example, we have neither his mother nor his father knows his whereabout. Neither his mother nor his father knows his whereabout. When you look at this, we have two conjunctions that are acting as a unit. That's why we call them correlative. It means they go together. You see, you cannot have one and leave the other, and then it does the role. So the two are acting as a unit, trying to connect two actions there. 2, you have to accept the offer, or you miss it all. When you look at this example also, we have there or, which is suggesting alternative, is this or the other one. So that's what it does here. Then we move on to the third example. We have either Cristiano or Messi must score a goal today. Get the point? Here, you are trying to suggest contrast here. That is alternative, either Cristiano or Messi. So it means if Cristiano fails to score, then Messi is likely going to score. Then from there, we move on to conjunctions suggesting consequences or result. Example, we have consequently, accordingly, so, therefore, henceforth, thus, etc. Examples, she was rude to the director. Accordingly, she was sacked. When you look at here, accordingly is acting as a link. It connects or joins these two sentences that we have there. 2, the soldier was accused of insubordination. Consequently, he was dismissed from the army. By looking at this, we have two statements there, and then here the consequently is acting as a link, you see, between the two. It's connecting the two. 3, examination malpractice is bad. Therefore, it is a punishable offense. So when you look at this, we have there two sentences, and the therefore is acting as a link, you see, between the two. So it's connecting the two. From there, we also have, by looking at those types of examples, now we're moving on to a different type of conjunction. Already we talked about coordinating conjunctions, and we've talked about other categories under it. Now we're moving on to another type of conjunction, which is subordinating conjunctions. These join subordinating or dependent clause to the main clause in the sentence. Take note, most of those preparing for us, you come to realize that this subordinating conjunction, just like relative pronouns, as we discussed in our previous lesson, we said examples under relative pronouns usually introduce relative or adjectival clause. Similarly, examples under subordinating conjunction also introduce adverbial clauses. So once you understand, you master examples under this category, then you are likely going to find it very easy to identify adverbial clauses from the rest. And let's go to it. So we're going to start looking at subordinating conjunctions of time. Examples we have after, as soon as, before, since, when, while, until, then, etc. Now we have examples here. It says the headmaster had left before I reached the school. When you look at this, before is acting as a conjunction, is connecting the two. And when you look at example 2, it says I have been living in this house since the previous tenant left. By looking at this, since is also acting as a conjunction of time. 3, he became permanent secretary as soon as he completed his master's degree. Get it? So the conjunction there also is as soon as. From that we move on to subordinating conjunctions of reason. Here we have examples like because, as, for, since, etc. Examples: I trust him because he never lies. Here the conjunction there is because, connecting the two. Example 2, he was expelled from the party for his disloyalty. Here, by looking at this example, for is also acting as a conjunction, connecting the two. Example 3, the leader is not respected since he compromised with his integrity. So integrity here, he's compromising his integrity and not being respected are two different statements, but the two are being connected with the conjunction since. From there we move on to subordinating conjunctions of purpose. Example: in order that, so that, in case, etc. Let's look at examples. It says 1, he will take the torch, we will take the torch in case it becomes dark. We will take the torch in case it becomes dark. So in case there is acting as a link between the two. So it is the conjunction there. Example 2, you have to work hard in order to succeed in life. When you look at this, you have the in order, which is also acting as a link connecting the two. Example 3, we have to take the work collectively so that we complete it on time. So the so that is acting as a link between the two. So it is the conjunction there. From there we move on to the other category. That's subordinating conjunctions of result. Example, we have so that, such that, etc. Example 1, she spoke so clearly that we heard everything. The so that is connecting the two, so it is the conjunction there. Number 2, the principal administered the school well such that the teachers became united. So the such that is also acting as the conjunction there, connecting the two statements there, the sentences there. From there we move on to subordinating conjunctions of condition. Example: if, unless, provided that, etc. Example 1, the boy will come if his father allows him. The boy will come if his father allows him. 2, unless we divide the work, we will not finish it. Even though the unless come at the beginning, but it's still acting as a conjunction. Take note, subordinating dependent clauses or subordinate clauses may have the dependent clause before the main clause. If it so happens, it means the subordinating conjunction will come first before anything. So you can even reposition this, whereby the main clause comes first and then the subordinate clause comes later. But once you start with this, you can start unless something happens and then the main clause follows. So it is correct. So the conjunction there is unless. 2, Ramadan will start on Monday, May 7th. Ramadan will start on May 7th, provided that we see the moon. So the provided that is also acting as a link between the two. So it is given a condition that we will only observe the Ramadan by 7th May only if the moon is sighted. From there we move on to subordinating conjunctions of comparison. Example, we have as, we have done, etc. Example 1, they have more books than we do. So when you look at this example, the done is acting as a conjunction connecting the two statements there. Number 2, Lamin is sincere as his father. So here, as is also acting as a conjunction connecting the sincerity of Lamin to that of his father. Then that will bring us to the end of conjunctions. Already we talked about the different types of conjunctions. We talked about coordinating conjunctions, correlative conjunctions, and subordinating conjunctions. So these are the main ones. And you take note, as far as subordinating conjunctions are concerned, we said usually they are used to introduce adverbial clauses. So later we'll talk about clauses, but before then, these are foundations for you to understand, so that by the time we reach grammatical terms and functions, you will find it very easy to cope. So from there, we're going to continue by looking at another part of speech, which is very, very, very important. All part of speech are important. All word classes are important. But by looking at prepositions is what confuses a good number of people. Sometimes when people are speaking or writing, they tend to mix them. And that's why we feel it's very important for you to be very much attentive here. You look at them as we discuss so that you'll be able to apply them as correctly as possible. From there, let's start by looking at prepositions. Preposition, so a preposition shows the relationship between a noun or pronoun and some other words in the sentence. So that's the role of a preposition. It makes sure that there is excellent relationship between a subject that could be a noun or pronoun with the other words in a sentence or structure. So that's the role of preposition. So they make sure that they establish that cordial relationship between the subject, that could be noun or pronoun, with the rest in a given sentence. So let's look at types of prepositions. Just like conjunctions, just like nouns, pronouns, and many other things that we'll discuss later, conjunctions also have types. And we intend to look at them one after another, which will help you to understand better. Now let's look at types of prepositions. Here we have common prepositions. These are also known as simple prepositions. They exist in single word form. In other words, sometimes you can call them simple preposition or one word preposition, because we have common and as well as compound prepositions, as we'll discuss later. Let's look at some of these examples. We have about, above, along, across, after, against, around, to, in, of, over, as, at, before, behind, up, with, between, under, into, of, until, beneath, beside, by, down, during, for, near, on, into, within, etc. So these are simple prepositions. They are one-word prepositions, even though we have others that are categorized under compound preposition, as we'll discuss later. So let's look at these prepositions, how we use them in some of the examples we have. Example 1, the book is on the table. By looking at this example, the on is a preposition, but it's a simple or common preposition because it is one word. It's only on. It's not paired with any other word to act as a unit. So it's one. 2, the dog barked at the intruder. Here, when you look at is a preposition there. 3, he came with the principal. So when you look at with there, it is a preposition. You get the point. So by looking at these 3 examples, we have common prepositions, or we call them simple prepositions or one-word prepositions. From there, we move on to the other type, which is compound prepositions. As I said earlier, if you say simple, compound should come. I think it's not going to take you time to distinguish the two. The simple means one word. Compound means 2 or more words acting as a unit. You get the point. Already we talked about conjunctions. Just to refer you back to that point, we said we have fanboys, that coordinating conjunction where they act as individual words, but we have correlative where they act in pairs. So therefore, this compound preposition also, we have 2 or more words acting as a unit. But all that they do is they also maintain extra relationship between a noun or pronoun, which could be the subject, and the rest, or any other word in a given sentence or structure. So let's go through these compound prepositions. Now, these are prepositions formed by combining a modifier with a preposition. Example, out of, because of, owing to, in case of, etc. So it means when you say compound preposition, it's a combination of two or more words acting as a preposition. So they are opposite to simple because they don't act as individual words, but group of words acting as a unit. So let's look at examples of compound prepositions in structures. One, schools are closed because of the coronavirus. When you look at this example, because of is a compound preposition here. Two, break this glass in case of emergency. You get the point. In case of also is a compound preposition. Three, we have classes in spite of the break. In spite of is also a compound preposition. By looking at these examples, they have one thing in common. All these prepositions are connecting, you see, one thing to the subject. That's either the school, breaking of the glass, or we having the class. So you see, so they act, in other words, they maintain a good relationship between the subject, which could be a noun or pronoun, and any other word in a sentence. Let's look at functions of prepositions. Now, basically, prepositions perform the functions of indicating direction, indicating time, indicating position, indicating place, indicating manner, and indicating reason. These are some examples of preposition. So you take note. We talked about types, and we say we have two main types. We have simple prepositions and compound prepositions. Now we are moving on to the different roles or functions they do in sentences. Good. Let's start. We're going to start by looking at prepositions of direction. These include over, along, from, to, into, towards, up, through, at, around, etc. These are examples of prepositions that show direction. Let's look at examples. Example 1. I saw her walking along the street. The along is indicating a direction. 2. The thief jumped over the wall. The over also is indicating direction. 2. The student has just returned from school. The from also is indicating direction. So these are examples that are indicating directions, and we categorize them as prepositions of direction. From there, we move on to preposition of time. These include by, after, until, at, on, etc. So, by looking at these examples, we have 1. The meeting will start by 6 p.m. The by is indicating time. 2. The news was read at 8 p.m. The at also indicates time. 3. She refused to carry the baby until he stopped crying. The until also is indicating time. So by looking at these examples, we've seen by, at, and until functionally showing time. From there, we move on to another category of preposition, another function of preposition, which is preposition of position. These include on, beside, between, across, in, within, under, by, etc. So they indicate position. You take note. Let's look at them in structures here. Example 1. The spoon is on the table. When you look at this, we have there on, which is a preposition. 2. The little boy swam across the river. The across there is also a preposition. And then 3. He lives just by go to school. The by also is a preposition. From there, we move on to another role or function of preposition, which is preposition of place. This shows place. Example, we have for, in, at, etc. Examples. 1. The headmaster has just left for Banjul. 2. he is in the room. 3, she is waiting at the end of the road. So when you look at these examples, both for, in, and at are playing the role of prepositions here. They indicate place. So they indicate place, for, in, and at. From there, we move on to another role of function of preposition, which is preposition of manner. This include by, on, as, etc. Examples: he normally travels by air. 2, he walks on foot to school. 3, she was treated as a queen. When you look at this example, they indicate manner, how something is done. For instance, how the man travels. 2, how he walks. And 3, how she is treated or was treated. So the by, on, and as are adverbs indicating manner. From there, we move on to preposition of reason or purpose. These include for, because, etc. Examples: the old man chose to be honest for the sake of his integrity. 2, he arrived late because of traffic jam. So when you look at these examples, we have seen for and because showing purpose or reason for something. So therefore, they are prepositions of reason or purpose. They show why something happened or why something is done. Then this will bring us to the end of prepositions. We talked about 2 main types of prepositions. We say we have simple prepositions, or we call them common prepositions. In other words, they are one-word prepositions. We also talked about compound prepositions. These are 2 or more words acting as a unit, but functionally, all that they do is to show excellent relationship between their subjects and other words in the sentence or sentences. So from there, we also talked about the different roles or functions of prepositions. We talked about place, we talked about manner, we talked about purpose, we talked about direction and time. So all those things are different roles or purpose of prepositions. Now we are moving to another word class or part of speech. Just as I said before, all these are very important. Now, once we understand them very well, it will help us to articulate well, to express ourselves very well without experiencing much difficulty. Now, let's look at interjections. These are words which directly express emotion and not related to the grammatical structure of the sentence. They express emotion. That's why we call interjections. Examples: alas, wow, oh, ah, eh, etc. Let's look at examples here. Example 1, wow, it is good news. 2, oh, that's unbelievable. 3, ah, I was seriously betrayed. So by looking at these examples, we have seen wow, oh, and ah, that are expressing emotion. And that's why by looking at them, they are followed by exclamation marks to express strong emotion. So that's it for interjections. So we're moving on to another important part of speech, which we use in our day-to-day writings or speeches. So verbs, very, very important. Now, let's look at it. These are words that express an action or a state of being. In other words, verbs tell what a noun or pronoun does or is in a sentence. Verb may either be lexical or auxiliary. This is very key. They are very, very important. So if you want to know what a subject does, you must be able to identify the verb. So the verb will help you to know what a given subject does in a given structure. So let's look at it. It also says when you come to a verb, they may be either lexical, we call them main verbs, or auxiliary helping verbs. Some verbs are main but others are auxiliary. When we say auxiliary, lexical means they can stand on their own. They may not need any support. While when you come to auxiliary, they are always there to help a main verb that they precede in a given structure. So anytime you have an auxiliary verb, a main verb always comes after it. Let's look at lexical verbs. They convey an independent meaning and they stand on their own in a sentence. Hence, they can be called main verbs. Some lexical verbs take S or ES inflections when used with the third person singular pronouns and singular nouns. This is very important. When you have an example, before we look at this, what he's trying to say is very simple. When you say main verbs, if they are in their present tense form, they either take S or ES depending on the subject. When the subject is singular, you are expected to inflect the verb with S or ES for there to be agreement between the two. Though we have an exception, I may be an exception because not always will I match with plural verbs, but you is always the case. So you take note of that. But if the subject is plural, or third person plural, or first person plural, or second person, both singular and plural, the verb must not take S or ES, because once you inflect it with an S or ES, it becomes singular, and then it will bring confusion between the two. In other words, there wouldn't be any agreement, and you take note of that. So you wouldn't say that Musa speak English. If you do it that way, it's not going to be correct. Why? Because Musa is singular, and when he says speak, that's plural, it won't go. So you say Musa speaks English. If you say the boys attend the meeting, no agreement, because the boys is already plural while the verb attend is singular. So therefore you say the boys attend, not the boys attends. So the first one should be the boys attend. In short, when a subject has S, when a noun has S, the verb shouldn't take S. When a noun is without an S, the verb should take S inflection. That's what he's trying to say. Let's look at some examples under these lexical verbs. We have example 1. It crawls on the ground. We are looking at this. The subject there is it, which is singular, and therefore the crawl must take an S inflection. That's why it says it crawls. You cannot say it crawl. If you say it crawl, it's going to be wrong because there wouldn't be agreement between the subject and its verb. Example 2. He goes to work every day. The he is singular. And then the goes is also singular because the go is the best form. Since es is added, it makes it singular. So there's agreement between the two. 3. Student sings very beautifully. By looking at the subject student, it also agrees with the verb sings. So because the sing also is inflected with an S, that makes the two to agree. So therefore, by looking at this, we have all the examples we have, they are main verbs. They are lexical verbs. That's why they have either S inflection to agree with the subject. Since all the subjects there are singular, then the verbs take an inflection that is S. Then we move on to the other example. Pastor preaches peace. The subject here is pastor, and the verb here is preach. So since pastor is singular, you cannot say preach, but you say preaches. The pastor preaches peace. So there's agreement between the two. Note, when used with first person and second person pronouns or plural nouns, lexical verbs need no S or ES inflection. That is best form of the main verb. What he's saying is that when you have first person and second person pronouns, that's I or we, or plural nouns, the boys, men, the drivers, etc., the verb must not take S or ES because they are already plural, and the verbs must not take S inflection because they must maintain that agreement. So if you say the boys, you say play. If you say the boy, you say plays. Take note of that. Examples. I sleep whenever I am tired. I is singular, and based on the rule that I have said earlier, I is first person singular, therefore you cannot say I sleeps. You say I sleep. The sleep agrees with I. Example 2, you think like an idiot. By looking at this, the verb think is the main one there. It agrees with you because the you is second person, either singular or plural, but either ways, it will always agree with a plural verb. 3, students cheat in every exam. The word cheat there is a verb. It's not taken as inflection because by looking at the subject, we have S added. So therefore, the verb must not be inflected with an S. Therefore, it will bring that harmony or agreement between the subject and its verb. So basically, that's it. So when you come to main verbs, one rule is very clear. You can either leave them as they are, that's in their base form, or you add S or ES depending on the subject. When the subject is singular with the exception of I or you, the verb must take S. But when the subject is plural or with inclusion of I and you, the verb must not take an S or ES inflection. So from there we move on to another category on the verb. Now we have regular and irregular verbs. Regular verbs, they are lexical verbs which form their past and past participle by adding D or ED to the base or root form. When you come to lexical regular verbs, they have one thing in common. If you want to give their past or past participle, you must inflect it with a morpheme. We call it past time morpheme, either D or ED. Let's look at examples here. Example 1, we have achieve. Past become achieved, and the past participle also achieved. These are regular. It means their past and past participle are the same. 2, arrive, arrived, and then arrived. Attend, attended, attended. Carry, carried, carried. Incite, incited, incited. Kill, killed, killed. Call, called, called. Declare, declared, declared. Recommend, recommended, recommended. Answer, answered, answered. Pick, picked, picked. Remove, removed, removed. Sack, sacked, sacked. Insult, insulted, insulted. Demote, demoted, demoted. And mark, marked, marked. By looking at these examples, you have seen the pattern that the past form of each of these verbs has the same form as far as their past participle is concerned. You get the point? So from there we move on to irregular verbs. Now when you come to irregular verbs, these are lexical verbs which form their past tense and past participle in different ways. In other words, their past tense and past participle are not the same. You see? So you take note of that. So let's look at irregular verbs. We have the base form, present, the past form, and past participle. This unlike the past. Here, by looking at sow, it said sowed, and the past participle become sown. Shake, shook, shaken. Run, ran, run. Eat, ate, eaten. Drive, drove, driven. Choose, chose, chosen. Blow, blew and blown. Bite, bit and bitten. Begin, began, begun. Tear, tore, torn. Wake, ring, rung, run. Write, wrote, written. Lie, lay, lain. Lay, laid, laid. Grow, grew, grown. Give, gave, given. Go, went, gone. Fly, flew, flown. Draw, drew, drawn. Do, did, done. When you look at these examples, let me just make one clarification. By looking at the word TEAR, we call it homograph. It has two sounds I said tear instead of tear. When you're referring to the water that comes out of your mind if you cry, we call that tear. But if you break something into pieces, you say tear. So you take note of that. That's why I say tear before you feel it is not correct. Now, by looking at these examples, one thing is common. You can use this and this alone, but all in the past participle category cannot be used alone. Anytime you use any one of them, they must always be preceded by an auxiliary verb. You can say, I draw. You can say, I drew, but you cannot say, I drawn. You see, so you must say, I have drawn. I had drawn. So anytime you use any, don't say the roof blown. No, the roof was blown. The roof is blown. So you take note. All past participles can never act on their own. They are always functionally correct if they are preceded by auxiliary verbs. There could be one or more. Let's move on. So we have another category of irregular verb which past and past participle form are the same. Let's look at, we have meet, met, met. And we have more examples. We have flee, fled, fled, and many more. So we have another irregular verb which present or base and past participle forms are the same. Come, came, come, run, ran, run. So we have another irregular verbs which present, that's base, past and past participle forms are the same. Here, be it present or past and past participle is the same. Split, 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 shed, 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 set, 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 and many more. So in short, this is very interesting when you come to irregular verbs and regular verbs as well. And what is common is that take note of past participle, whether they are regular or irregular. Anytime you use any one of them, they must always be preceded by an auxiliary verb, unlike present or past. So basically that's it for today. Next class, we're going to continue from finite and non-finite verbs. And that's one of the most important areas when you come to verbs, because it will help you to identify a phrase from a clause. So I thank you all the best. I wish you all the best of luck, and then I hope that you'll enjoy my next lesson that's going to come later. And then just to give the usual advice, you are asked to stay at home and enjoy the lessons there, and always take the precautions that are given by our experts. Always wash your hands with soap and then water, and use other hand sanitizers as well, and always avoid crowd. With that, we will all be safe. So I thank you all the best until I come your way next class. Have a nice day.